Welcome to the Cost Event Training 1.0. In this video we will go over the basics of how to set up and workflow a cost event, how it will reflect on the ACR, and how to hand off to a change order. The purpose of a cost event is to project expense and revenue on a project. Cost event line items can either be listed as expense, revenue, or both. Both line items have the ability to track potential changes in cost and revenue. Cost events allow for line items to be handed off to revenue or expense change orders depending on the line item type. To begin with, log into ProLiance, go into the project workspace, and enter the project that you are working on. Cost events are located under Applications, Contract Management, Change Control, Cost Events. This is our cost event register. It shows us all the cost events that have been set up and allows us to create new ones. There are four main workflow states for cost events. They are draft, active, closed, and canceled. Draft and canceled do not show up on the ACR. To create a new cost event, navigate to your cost event register, click the drop-down arrow next to the new, and click Cost Event. We start on the main page. The main page has our title, which is the only required field for our cost event. We also recommend using the document description to add details as to why the cost event is there, entering a reason code. Could be internal contingency, is it an owner change, is it a back charge? All these things can be picked from the pick list. These allow us for easier sorting on the register and also reports related to cost events. The initiating document reference is a document that is linked to the cost event and is the reason why the cost event was created. For instance, an RFI can be initiating reference document saying the results of an RFI have caused us to incur additional costs. At the bottom is the parties section. This is primarily used for owner change request CPL. This allows us to put in the project manager and the owner, which will then populate onto the CPL. The next page we want to go over is the settings page. The two main things to look at on the settings page are the automatically create drawdowns box. When this is checked, it will draw down from the uncommitted costs on your ACR, and when this is unchecked, it will not affect the uncommitted costs on your ACR. The other is the line item's default type. Depending on the type of cost event you are creating, you should change this to the appropriate line item type, either expense, revenue, or both. Once you have saved your cost event, you also get an activity log and attachments. On the Attachments tab, there are two sections for adding additional information to the cost event. The bottom section is where you can attach external files from your hard drive, drawings, Excel spreadsheets, etc. On the top half is where you can add links to ProLiance documents from the project that pertain to this. Drawings that have been uploaded, submittals, additional RFIs, all that can be linked to your cost event. If you go back to the General tab and then go to Line Items page, this is where you input the information that will show up on your ACR. The first thing to note is the display columns. Depending on the type of cost event you are doing, you should adjust this to the appropriate cost event type. This will hide rows that you are using or not using. First thing you have to do is add a line. Click the Add button to get your line. If you want to delete a line, you must check the box for that line and then click Delete. As we go through the page I'll describe the different rows and what they mean to you. The first is line item type. This will tell you if it's going to reflect expense, revenue, or both revenue and expense. The item number must be unique, so if you delete a line, make sure that you don't get a duplicate, two number 1s, two number 3s, otherwise you cannot save the cost event. Your line item descriptions have two parts. There's one at the top, and there's one at the bottom. The one at the top is referred to as a parent description, and the one at the bottom is referred to as the child description. The parent description is what is viewed in E1 and IPM systems when cost events are handed off to change orders. The line at the bottom is what shows up on your ACR drill through detail and on your CPLs for cost events and for change orders. Columns in the top that are shown in blue are areas where you can enter information either related to revenue or to your expense that you're trying to track. The final revenue amount is the amount that was handed off to a revenue change order or contract. A target revenue contract is a revenue contract that this line can be linked to. It does not mean that it has been linked to it yet. It just means that it can be linked to that document. If you enter a target revenue contract, that means you cannot accidentally hand off this line to the wrong contract or change order. This is a great way to prevent mistakes. A revenue committing document means that the line item has been handed off to a revenue contract or a revenue change order, and the dollars are now being reflected in that document. As we move to the expense area, again we have blue columns where you can enter to track expenses. If it's a both line item, your expense needs to match your revenue side. The final expense is the amount that was handed off to your expense document, either a contract or a change order. Your target expense contract is the document that the line item can be linked to. Again, like the target revenue contract, if you enter this information, it cannot be pulled into the wrong contract or change order. Again, this prevents mistakes when you're in a rush. The expense committing document is the actual document that line item was linked to and that the dollars have been handed off to. The bottom section is referred to the cost account allocation grid. By default, when you add a line up above, you'll get a line down below. Most cases, you will use one line at the top for every one line at the bottom. Like we said earlier, there's a line item description. Typically, most people will use the same description in both the top and bottom section. Next is the place to enter your cost account reference. This is the title of the cost account. You can either begin typing it, and it will give you the choices matching that, or you may click the hourglass and pick from the list. In either case, you will only be able to select active cost accounts. The next is the advanced code. This is the number for the cost account and the cost account type. It's very important to verify that you've selected the right cost account type, depending if it's internal or external cost. Over here we have the line item amount. When you enter an amount up above, you'll also get that amount typically will carry down below. If you change one of the two numbers, you need to make sure that both items match. Occasionally you do have to manually match those numbers up. If you choose to add more than one line item in the lower section so that you can have different descriptions and different dollar amounts, you need to make sure that the sum of the bottom matches the total amount at the top. So if you have $1,000 at the top, you can have two $500 line items in the bottom. But they do need to be for the same cost account in both instances. Both cost account and cost account type need to match identically. If you've added a line item and it is the wrong line item type, you may change it without having to delete the line. Select the line that you want, go to the line item settings, change line item type, select the type that you want to change it to, and click OK. The warning will come up, say yes to confirm, give it a minute to create the change. Now it's changed. On our ACR, this was now flipped from an expense to a revenue. It's important to note that you can only do one line at a time. So selecting multiple lines will still only change one at a time. You have to do this for each line that you want to convert. To show you where the dollars show up on the ACR, we're going to change this to a both line item. And then we're going to put in $500 for both the expense and the revenue. We can see the line item amount has matched up down here. I'm going to select my cost account. I'm going to save. Now I'm going to activate this so that it'll show up on my ACR. When I go to my ACR and I refresh, I now have, under my electrical systems cost code, I now have the cost event. On the revenue side, a cost event will show up under the pending budget revisions. Once it has been handed off to a revenue change order and executed, it will move from this column to the budget revisions column. On the expense side, the cost event shows up in the cost events column. When a cost event gets handed off to a change order or an expense contract, it moves to the pending commitments column, and then once that document becomes executed, it either moves to the original commitments or the executed change commitments. Now we will go over how to create a expense cost event. Expense cost events are used to forecast additional costs that Ryan will incur and will not get additional revenue for. Create a new cost event. Enter your title. Go to the settings page and verify that the Create Automatic Drawdowns box has been checked and that the line item's default type is set to expense. Click Save. Go to your line items page. Change the display columns to expense. Click Add to get a new line item. Add a description. Go to the blue columns to enter the amount. For external costs, enter a target contract. Copy your description from the top into the bottom. Enter your cost account reference. Verify that this is the correct cost account and correct cost account type. Repeat this as many times as necessary to track all the expenses related to this cost event. Click Exit Edit Mode and Yes to save. Now we're going to workflow this to active. You can either click the active button or you can click on the drop down box from workflow and go to active. Click execute. I'm going to return to the document. We now can see that the state has changed to active. If I go to my ACR and I refresh it, we can now see that the additional dollars have been added to our cost event column. Now we will go over creating a revenue cost event. Go back to our cost event register, create a new cost event, enter your title, go to the settings page. This time we want to uncheck the box for create drawdowns. Using revenue, we do not need to draw down from the uncommitted costs. I'm going to change our default line items type to revenue. Go to our line items page. Change our display columns to revenue. Click add to get a new line item. Enter a description. We're going to go to the first column and add our revenue amount. We're going to put our target owner contract in here. I'm going to take the description from above, paste that down below, enter our cost account reference. Again, we're going to verify that this is the correct cost account number and cost account type. In this case, because it's an owner, we're going to get additional profit. I'm going to track that separate. Verify that that's correct. Now I'm ready to activate. And when I refresh the ACR, we will now have the additional money shown on under our pending budget revisions. The last type of cost event is a both cost event. Both cost events are used to forecast owner changes or change requests. These forecast additional revenue from the owner and the expense and profit that Ryan will receive. We create our new cost event, enter our title, give it a reason code, in this case it's owner. Go to our settings page. For both cost event, we want to uncheck our automatic drawdowns because we're projecting the revenue and we're projecting the expense that we're going to incur due to this revenue all in one event. We don't need to draw down from our uncommitted. Change the line items types to both. Click Save. Go to our line items page. This time we want to change our display columns to both. Add a line item. Enter a description. We're going to go to our revenue. And as we said earlier, your revenue needs to match your expense. So I've entered my revenue. I'm going to enter my target revenue contract. I'm going to go over to the expense side, add the same expense. Enter my target expense contract. I'm going to take the line item description, paste that to below, add my cost account reference, verify that the advanced code matches the correct cost account and the correct cost account type. Repeat this process as many times to reflect all the pertinent line items. Exit edit mode. We're going to save and workflow to active. I'm going to go to my ACR, I'm going to refresh, view my line items. I now have an extra $50 in revenue and an extra $50 in expense for that line item. The final thing we want to show you is how to hand a cost event line item off to a change order. Open the cost event and go to the line items page. Click Edit. In this case, we're going to demonstrate how to do an expense change order handoff. The process is the same for revenue change order. You're just using the revenue tools instead of the expense. I'm going to go to the expense tools, click Handoff to new change order. I'm going to click Yes to save the document. Selecting the top radial button will only allow you to select target contracts that have been entered. If you've not entered target contracts, you need to select the bottom radial button to see all expense contracts. Click Next once you've entered the contract. We're going to click Add to add the line items. This line item, which has the correct description and amount, has been linked to this target contract, so it's the only one we can see. The only line items you can see on this page are line items that have listed the target contract that you have already pulled or have no target contract listed. And they only show up from this cost event. They will not show up from other cost events. Once you've clicked Add and that line item has been added to the bottom section, click OK. You can see that we have one line item for the $50. I'm going to click Next. Now you need to select one of these two options. The top option, which is Create one Schedule of Values line item for each cost event line item, will create one change order line item for each cost event line item you have selected. If you have selected 4 cost event line items, you will get 4 change order line items. The other option, create one new schedule of values per unique cost event for all selected cost event line items, will give you one cost event line for the entire cost event, regardless of the number of lines in the cost event. It is very important to note that for expense change orders, this bottom option can only be selected if each line contains the exact same cost code and cost code type. If it does not, integration will error out and your change order will not properly integrate into the E1 IPM system. I'm going to select the top, click Next. We're doing an expense change order, so I'm going to click Finish. We're going to make sure to wait. It does take a few minutes to create the new document. It is important not to click Finish more than once because it can create more than one change order or add the line items more than once accidentally when you are creating the change order. It's now open the new change order. You have now handed the cost event off to the change order. As noted earlier, the process is the same for both revenue and expense. Once all the line items have been handed off from the cost event into change orders, you can workflow the cost event into the closed state. Any dollars that weren't handed off for some reason will still reflect on your ACR, and you can reactivate the cost event at a later time if you've accidentally closed a cost event too early. If you need to hand off multiple cost events into a single change order, this needs to be done from the change order. Details on how to perform this are in the Cost Events 2.0 video.